Hills School Board Candidate Night, Director's Night. For those of you who don't know me, I'm District Judge Richard Opiella, and it's a real honor for me to moderate this debate. I was reflecting on the way in. This is the fifth one that I've been able to moderate, and it really is a privilege because from my perspective, I get to see mostly the negative of the world. And so it's nice to see positive thoughts, how we make our community better, how we are affirmative in what we're doing as opposed to reactionary. So I'm hoping we're going to hear that tonight. Our mask policy is that it's required. Thank you in particular to the ladies and the Parent Teachers Association, Highcliffe, McIntyre, Ross, Westview for sponsoring the event. Thank you candidates for being here. And the audience, thank you as well. We are being recorded. Nothing said here by me or the PTA members relative to the questions should reflect in any way on what North Hills School District views this about. And as I indicated, this is being audio and video recorded, so let's keep it positive and polite. Our candidates are seated in alphabetical order from me to closest. The opening candidate was selected by lottery. Each candidate will have a 3-minute opening. Questions have been submitted previously, unlike in the past 5 times, and they were solicited from the district-wide, and myself and the folks from the PTAs have gone through them. We've tried to keep them informative and educational as opposed to personal. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Closing remarks will be for 2 minutes, and that will hopefully get us close to the 9 o'clock hour. I'd ask you to keep your applause to a minimum in response. We can give everybody a big hand of applause right now. Get started. As the candidates, I'd ask you to listen closely to each question, and audience, please listen to each response. And in doing so, let's keep in mind the mission statement of North Hills School District: to excel at educating and preparing each student to become responsible, contributing members of society by providing a caring and an academically challenging environment. It's my pleasure to introduce these 7 candidates in alphabetical order. They're running for 4 open seats. Jim Barr, furthest from me, Constitutional Party. Dale Bricker, Jr., Republican Party. Sandra Kazera on the Democratic ticket. Allison Mathis on the Democratic ticket. Joseph Muha on the Republican ticket. Elizabeth Neath on both Republican and Democratic ticket. And Michael Santucci on the Republican and Democratic ticket for the general election on November 2nd. We will start openings with Ms. Neath, 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Neath, and I have lived in the North Hills all of my life. My parents, Ron and Joanne Trant, chose to start their family here because they do the excellent education that we get. I graduated from North Hills in 2000 and went on to IUP to get my degree in elementary education. I met my husband while I was at college, and somehow was able to convince him to move on the same street as my parents. Because I loved the North Hills so much, and I was so happy with the education that I had received, I wanted that same thing for my own children at some point. We do have 3 daughters now, who I love and am so proud of. They are currently in the middle school at Highcliffe and in preschool. With my degree, I taught kindergarten through here in the North Hills, and then was given an opportunity to use my education degree in a different way, and decided to start to work for Aflac. I worked for Aflac for 8 years in both sales and training, and currently I am lucky enough to be able to be home with my girls, which was a huge help in the last year. I'm really looking forward tonight to sharing my thoughts and ideas with everyone, and interested to hear what the other candidates have to say as well. Thank you.
Mr. Santucci.
Hello. First of all, thanks everybody for coming out tonight to hear what we have to say. My name is Mike Santucci, and I'm not a politician. It's kind of a funny thing to hear for someone running for a political office, right? teacher, and a husband. My wife Sandy has a small business, and unfortunately, like most moms, she's had to bear the brunt of the burden of being home with our children while they were forced to stay home because of the COVID pandemic. Now, I decided to run the school board to offer my perspective and experience as a teacher, father, and husband to help our school district navigate unfamiliar waters ahead. COVID-19 has taken a toll on all of us, but especially our young children, who have been forced into unconventional learning environments for the first time, basically in history. As a teacher, I know I was not prepared to teach online, especially my content area, which is technology education. As a father, I see that in my own two children, whether it be Daphne struggling to read or Meadow struggling with emotional difficulties and strain of not being around her friends. As a high school teacher, I've seen it, my students struggling to attend class remotely because they've been distracted, maybe by babysitting younger siblings. Nobody in this district, or any district, could have foreseen the length and scope of the COVID-19 pandemic. But now, as we get back to reopening our schools, I want to offer my unique expertise to the board as it develops plans to help our students move forward. I'm so proud to be from the North Hills School District. I graduated North Hills High School in 2002. I went on to pursue my degree at California University of Pennsylvania, and for those 4 years that I was there, that was the only time in my life that I didn't live in the same zip code. My dad graduated from North Hills in 1967, and he chose to start his family, build a house here in Ross Township in 1977. My sister graduated from North Hills in 1998. She's actually one of the distinguished alumni from, I believe, 2018. That was an award that I wanted to nominate her for, not only because of all of her life achievements, but also because I felt that that was an award worth having. My wife is also a North Hills resident and graduated in 2005. My two children, Meadow and Daphne, are now McIntyre Elementary School teachers. Thank you. Not students. Not students.
Maybe someday. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr.
Yeah, Jim Barr, alumni of Northfield School District, 1970, resident of Westview Borough for 38 years, and resident of Ross Township before that for 25 years. But I wasn't here all my life, though, just all but 4 of the years. Kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm running for school board to, I'd like to represent the residents of Westview Borough who haven't had anybody on the school board for probably close to 15 years now. So that's about all I can say, that I yield my time to somebody else.
Mr. Bricker, and I would remind the candidates to lean into those mics.
Good evening, candidates, members in attendance, viewers, and PTA members who have organized this event. Thank you for your time in preparing and participating tonight. My name is Dale Bricker. I am a father to a young student at Ross Elementary and a difference maker in our community, county, and region. I serve or have served on multiple boards in North Hills, including its athletic association and the Ross Township Equal Opportunity Board. I mentor and tutor locally at Anchor Point and do the same with Big Brothers Big Sisters. Additionally, I manage, coach, and serve as commissioner for NHA Youth Baseball and carry out many of the same functions regionally with the Rawlins Tigers. I once coached baseball for the Westview Ross Association, and now it seems like a lifetime ago. I also serve or have served our community as a youth basketball coach in North Hills at the Ross Community Center, where I lead clinics and coach the middle school team to the championship in 2020. I've also coached basketball in Mount Oliver and in Hampton for multiple organizations. For my commitment, collaboration, and leadership with these and other activities, I was selected as a 2020 Allegheny County District 1 Difference Maker. Professionally, I'm a global manager for a multi-billion-dollar company who leads data operations and technology teams through growth strategies that result in efficiencies, increased productivity, rapid development, and quality delivery. From this, I hope you capture my spirit, passion, energy, love, and leadership for serving and enhancing our community. All qualities that I bring to the school board if you give me your vote by or on November 2nd. I'll close with one of my favorite quotes that explains me well. We can make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Thank you.
Ms. Kazera?
Thank you, Judge Opiella, and thank you to the members of the PTO who organized this event. Welcome to everybody. My name is Sandy Kazera. I am on the board currently. This would be my second term if I am re-elected to the board. I am a 1994 graduate of North Hills, and much like Mr. Santucci and Ms. Neese, I currently live about a quarter mile from my parents. I went to the College of Worcester, which is in Ohio. Following graduation from there, I moved to Washington, D.C. and worked for a number of tech startups, and then I moved back to this region. I attended law school at the University of Pittsburgh and practiced for a few years in Wheeling, West Virginia in estate planning before I moved back and settled in Ross Township with my husband, and we have 2 children who are in 6th grade and 2nd grade at Ross Elementary. I have enjoyed my time on the board and would like to continue my my service to the community. Before I was on the board, I volunteered with the Middle School Mentor Program, and I was active in the Pittsburgh Sports League, which is where I met my husband. And I just wanted to, since I'm one of 2 people that are seeking re-election, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things I'm proud of having accomplished on the board. We have been working on updating some of the policies and reviewing them and making sure that they're up to date and in line with what we're doing. And I'm proud of many of the administrative hires that we've made. We've, for one reason or another, had the opportunity to hire a number of administrators, and I think that we've done a good job of that. And to be a little more transparent and open with communication to the community about some of the things that we're doing. I've really, as I mentioned, really enjoyed my time on the board, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve our students and our community in this position. Thank you.
Ms. Mathis?
Hello. I'd like to begin by thanking the parent-teacher groups from our elementary schools for organizing this event. As a former PTO president, I know firsthand how much work goes into volunteering, so thank you so much for all that you do. My name is Allison Mathis. I was first elected in 2017. I'm the current board president and chair of the Education Committee. In my capacity as board president, I serve on a variety of other district committees as well. I have 2 children enrolled in North Hills. Both attended Ross Elementary beginning in kindergarten. My son is now a sophomore in high school and a proud member of the marching band. And my daughter is in 7th grade and she plays lacrosse. I am a graduate of the Johns Hopkins University. My professional background is in communications and project management, and I currently work as a client services manager at a local communications agency in Pittsburgh. I am an active member of the Pennsylvania School Board Association and serve as Section 5 advisor, which means I am the advisor to school directors in surrounding counties, and I am also a fierce advocate for public education. I am currently running unopposed for the position of Vice President of the PSBA Governing Board, and should I be fortunate enough to win re-election for the North Hills School Board, I would be seated to this position in 2022. Serving our community in this manner is a great responsibility and time commitment. I am a dedicated board member and work well with others. I consider each vote objectively, and when budgeting, I consider the needs of the entire community balanced with the needs of our schools. I believe in leading by example. I am an active and visible member of the board who often shows up to support our students at games and events. I answer all emails the board receives in my capacity as board president. If you know me at all personally, hopefully you already know this. Since March of 2020, our district and board have been forced to contemplate a situation none of us had dreamed of before. Our teachers, parents, students, and administration have remained flexible and adaptable in the face of extraordinarily difficult and unforeseen times to provide the best possible education. It is important for me to distinguish that no one board member has any singular power. I believe it is critical that members of the school board work as a team alongside the superintendent. I believe that our focus as members of the Board of Education should be on education. I believe that good board members have no singular agenda. That being said, I hope to continue working alongside my colleagues on the board to provide an equitable education for all students and support academic excellence in our district while backing programs that meet the social and emotional needs of our students. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Gill.
Hello, I'm Joe Buhall. I have resided in Ross Township since 1998 with my wife, who's a part-time lunch and recess aide at napkin time. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank her for putting up with all this campaign stuff I do when I'm not at home. My son has gone through the Northfield School District from K to 12, just graduating last June. He is currently a freshman at St. Vincent College. As for my background, I was born and raised in McKeesport, the son of a small business owner and a housewife. After graduating high school, I went on to Carnegie Mellon University to earn a Bachelor of Science in Metallurgical Engineering. During my career, I also attended night classes, first earning an MBA from Chapman University and then a Master of Science in Materials Engineering from the University of Pittsburgh. Currently, I am Quality Manager at a company called 6K Additive. I am also on the Executive Board of ASM International's Pittsburgh chapter, which is an engineering professional society. I'm head of their CAT Solaire Scholarship Committee, which awards a scholarship to an area high school senior each year who is majoring in science or engineering. I do have previous experience on the school board. During my time on the board, the district improved their credit rating and was in a strong financial position. We were able to build an addition to McIntyre Elementary without borrowing any money. We also added math and English coaches, and we brought in one-to-one iPads. I also served for 1 year on the A.W. Beatty board. So why do I want to be on the school board again? Well, I think as someone with 3 degrees, I love education. I also enjoy working with youth, and I think youth are very important. I volunteer with youth such as Scouts. I've done Children's Hospital, coaching youth activities, and church activities. Youth are very important to our future. Obviously, the school directors hold a position of responsibility for this education, the efficient use of the tax dollars, communication with the stakeholders of the Northfield School District. I think I have unique qualifications with my work and volunteer skills to perform these functions. We must understand that the core mission of the school district is the education of the students. This means preparing our students for a successful life after Northfield, no matter what their career choice may be. Education and job skills are imperative for confidence, dealing with new situations, good decision-making, quality of life, and economic freedoms. The school directors obviously do not do the teaching, but they provide the gold standards and policies for the best interest of our students. Recently, our students have had almost 1 full year of virtual learning, which has not worked well for the majority of students, while other schools have had in-person option. I'll be preemptive here. 15 seconds already. When you cast your vote, please vote for someone who is qualified and who thinks through the situation. Vote for someone who values your opinion and is responsible with your tax money. Let's make this a better school district together.
Thank you, Mr. Buhar. All right, we're going to go to question 1. We're going to start with Michael Santucci. And the question has 2 parts to it. What are the 3 most important issues facing the school district now? And what current issue are you most passionate about and why? 1 minute.
Thank you. So, in my opinion, the biggest issue that we are facing currently is maintaining 5 days a week of in-person instruction for our students. There are other issues that we're facing. Obviously, we have some fiscal challenges coming up, maintaining a balanced budget while trying to not increase taxes. But I do believe that there's also been some lost learning that has happened over the past year and a half. Just heard an interesting stat. The first full week of school this year was the first time there was a full week of school in 18 months. months. Now, I believe that a good place to start is to gather all stakeholders to reevaluate the district plan for the next 5 to 10 years, assessing students' academic growth post-pandemic and considering what funds will be available in light of the economic crisis of the past year. With proper planning and communication among all stakeholders, I'm confident that we can continue to create a great learning environment for our Northville students.
Mr. Barr.
I guess I think for me, the biggest problem is property tax. You could lose your home if you don't pay your property tax, under the education system. The Pennsylvania law says that the General Assembly shall provide for a thorough and efficient system of education. I don't think they recognize the law. I think that's a problem when we're getting all these intellectual type people that don't follow the law. And I guess that's probably the biggest concern. Each individual has to do what they have to do in school. It's you can't have the teachers do it for you. It's up to the individual. It's parents. Parents are the ones that are responsible for their children, not school systems. So I guess those are the two of the biggest problems, and I'll yield my time to anybody else.
Mr. Burkert.
Thank you. I believe the three biggest issues in the school district, one, having children in school 5 days a week. I know that they are now. I have concerns that they will continue to be. Mental health. So we know not only academically, but we know emotionally and socially, and I know this from experience by tutoring for 2 organizations or mentoring for 2 organizations. So I would like to solve some of those issues, including expanding training for our teachers and our students in that area. And then I believe budgeting is the next one. So as many of you know, we've increased our taxes this year. We've dipped into our PASERS fund, and I'm personally against that, not only for this year, but I would like to increase opportunities for revenue, because there are opportunities out there, like the sale price on homes and that allocation that comes to us. And then I'll stop there because I'm getting bored.
Thank you. Ms. Kazera.
Thanks.
Please lean your mics.
There are 2 issues that come to mind immediately. One is the pressing issue of the learning loss and figuring out what learning loss we have and how we can help students get to a point where we're kind of moving forward and getting them where they need to be, academically. The second issue is the finances. I agree with many of the comments ahead of me that the way our schools are financed in Pennsylvania is problematic because most of the funding is local. We are towards the bottom nationally of states that where funds are provided at the state level, which causes us to need to come up with that money locally one way or another, and that causes equity issues, and it causes problems with needing to raise taxes to make up these increasing costs for education.
Ms. Matheson.
I believe the 3 most important issues facing our district today are first and foremost to provide an equitable education for all students in our district in order to prepare them for the future and be global citizens. Secondly, I believe that we need to support our students socially and emotionally, which is something I've discussed at length at school board meetings. We need to be considering the whole student and focusing on their mental health and wellness, not just their academics. And actually, I think the third most pressing or immediate issue facing our district is the renovation of Westview Elementary, and doing this in a responsible way which honors the community and turns the building into something even more amazing than it is. Thank you.
Mr. Mueller.
In my mind, the 3 biggest issues, at least at the current time, are to continue the 5-day-a-week education. As I started to say, most kids do not do well on this, including my own son, and also 2 of the other students that have certainly gotten behind with virtual learning. This gets into also issue 2, the lost learning. How do we address this? Especially I'm concerned 80 students. My son took metalworking. We do not have a welder at home. We do not have a lathe at home. This is things he'll never make up. Also, I think the school board has the responsibility for setting high standards for students and high expectations that they should be meeting in the classroom.
Ms. Neese.
I think that the three most important issues are maintaining the kids staying 5 days in the classroom. I don't think we can ever go back to the virtual. We realized how much they lost in that year. Number two would be figuring out a way to catch the kids back up. The last week I was at both of my kids' curriculum nights. All of their teachers mentioned how far behind our kids are. I went to the school board meeting, and again, it was mentioned based on the PSSA test, how far behind we are. So I think we've got to figure out a plan to catch them up. And the last thing would be mental health. I'd like to see the board come up with a plan to be able to help more students that are struggling with this right now after not being in school for the last year. Thank you.
That completes question one. Question two, we'll start at the far end with Mr. Barr. This is a three-part question. What attributes and behaviors are essential for a school board member? What positive attitudes do you feel you would bring? And what motivates you to be a school board member?
I'll start with the last one. I think, like I said, Westview hasn't had anybody on this board. They really need representation. The other things,
What attributes are essential for a good school board member, and what positive attributes do you offer?
well, attendance is the main one. They have to be there. It's a financial responsibility. I think we have these trained and educated administrators that can guide us and give us the concerns of the school district. We can't. I don't think the school board members can know and see all. So we have to rely on administrators to share the concerns, and then we will make the decisions on the votes. And number one again, Judge.
What attributes and behaviors make a good school board director?
It's a difficult one. Just being there and being concerned, and represent the constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Berger.
Thank you. I believe that some of the attributes are, you have to have a passion, right? You have to have a passion to serve the community. As I think as it's been stated many times before, that we don't do none of us up here would do this or are doing it because there's money involved. So you have to have the passion to serve your community. Leadership, obviously, in my mind, and that is something I'd like to bring to the board. Every single job I've ever held from the time of 16 when I could work, I've either been a supervisor, a manager, or a senior leader. Collaboration is also important. Now, I don't want to mistake that. This does not mean agreeing with everything and everybody. Collaboration means working in a purposeful manner through differences to reach goals. And then, so I can bring that, I believe. And then the other one that I could definitely bring is what people have described to me as a tireless, or what some might call scary work ethic. So I believe you have to have good work ethic. Thank you.
Ms. Kazari.
I think it's important to be ready for anything, and I would come to this position without any particular agenda. I've found that being ready to kind of address completely unpredictable issues and attitudes has been something that's important to be a board member. Also, working with other people and being able to kind of find common ground with all the board members and the administrators and working together. As far as my motivation, I want to be involved in the community. I want to make sure that we have a good school. It benefits everybody, whether or not people have students in the buildings, to have a good school in our community. And I think we do, and I want to continue that. Thank you.
Ms. Mapp.
I believe a good school board member is accessible, is very communicative, is able to make objective decisions and look at the big picture, can work well as a member of a team, is transparent with the community, and prepares for meetings and does their homework. And I believe I bring all of those things to my role on the school board. What motivates me is really my love for the community and just wanting the best future for all students in our district and to be able to provide the best quality education for all students in our district.
Mr. Mutafeld.
I think some of the most important attributes are passion, flexibility, communication, decision-making, analytical skills, honesty, and integrity. I think these are positives that I offer as as an engineer and quality manager. I have to be honest, and integrity is very important. We make parts that go into aircraft, so we can't cut corners on things like that. I deal with various people, not only in the plant, but customers and vendors, customers from all over the world. So, plus I also mentioned, I do have a passion for working, for the young people and for education. So I think I bring all this to the table.
Ms. Neese.
I think that something that would make you a good board member is that you're a good team player, that you are willing to listen to everyone, not just a certain group of folks. I think that it's important that you can make decisions that aren't necessarily how you personally feel, but what is really going to be best for all of the students in the district, and constantly just putting the students' best interest at hand. I think what I would offer, I consider myself to be a good leader. I have held many leadership roles in my life, dating the whole way back to high school, being the captain of different sports teams. I was a leader in an AFLAC with the entire state training. I feel like I'm a very kind person. I'm willing to listen to what others have to say, and I work really well with other people on a team.
Mr. Santucci will finish up question 2.
Thank you. So, my opinion as the attributes that would make up a good school board member are things like leadership, collaboration, teamwork. Positive things that I could bring would be to be level-headed, listen to all sides, make a decision based on what is best for the district, and best for the students, best for the community members. The thing that motivates me is essentially my children. I want to make this a better place, not only for them, but a better place for their children. Going back to the leadership thing, as a department chair, technology education department chair, I believe that I was able to become a building leader at my high school. Also able to manage and balance the budget every year, purchase supplies needed for a bunch of consumables for our classes, and just having a general knowledge of the education system also helped be beneficial.
Thank you. We're going to go up for question 3, starting with Mr. Berker. And I'd like to use the COVID mask issue in answering this question. Could you support a board decision you did not vote in favor of? Why or why not? Would you vote your preference or what's in the best interest of the parents/children of the school district? And finally, how would you maintain a good working relationship with your board members if you didn't agree?
So, I mean, in every line of, the easiest way to explain this, I believe, is in every line of work that I've been involved in as manager, senior manager, mentor, tutor, whatever. There are disagreements. Baseball coach is probably the primary example, because there are differences on a daily basis, hourly basis, all the time. And I deal with that through one being level-headed. I can accept other positions. I don't have to take a hard line stand. I guess the easiest way to say that in time limitation is, I understand that I'm voted on this board, or would be voted on this board to serve the community at large. So if there were differences, then we would just have to work through them and come to an agreement for what's best for them.
Ms. Kazera?
With respect to following the board decision, it's not in favor of, I would absolutely do that once the board has decided. That's the rule, and I would expect that everybody would abide by the rule. You're not always going to be on the winning side, but you just have to go with it. That's how the majority vote works. As far as whether I would vote in the best interest of the district was something I did not agree with. I believe that I would do that. It's a dichotomy because, there are certain things where, my children may feel a certain way or may benefit a certain way, but you have to consider the entire community. And I'm not sure, I may have done this, I can't remember, but I certainly would consider it. I think it's important to consider the process and not just the end result when you're determining how to vote on something. And I can't remember the last part, but I'll just stop because of time. Thank you.
Ms. Mathis?
Yes, of course, I would abide by the majority vote. That's what we are sworn in to do as board members. Sometimes you are in the minority, and when that happens, you have to leave it in the boardroom and move on because there'll be another meeting, and you'll have other decisions that you need to make. Every board member gets one vote, but it is absolutely challenging to work through issues with your teammates on the board when there is disagreement. People can feel very passionately. I try to be as open and honest with people as I can and continue those lines of communication.
Mr. Bueller?
I think it's important to support the board decision, and when I was on the board before, there were a couple times I was outvoted 8-1. I support the board decision for that. Probably easier to skip the 3. It depends on what the issue is. There are some issues that I feel weakly on, say, or less strongly. Some I feel passionately about. If it's something I feel passionately about, I keep the lines of communication open. I keep talking about it, but keep it on a civil level. Just trying to make my point in a cooperative way. As far as voting the preference or for the community, I think that's what you're here for, is for whatever benefits the community as a whole, not yourself. And the only thing about that is, does certain people, do they want to fit in with the current policies and other laws? So
Ms. Neese?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's okay to disagree with people. I think that's what makes the world go round, especially on hot topics that we have these days. When it comes to decisions, we're going to relate it to the mask. I personally believe that anything that's a health decision that's going to affect our children, those types of decisions should be made by the parents and not the school board or government. The parents are who are spending the most time with their children. They know their kids the best, and I think they should get to decide. Now, whatever the board would vote on, I obviously would agree with that. I wouldn't say, no, I'm not doing that. But I think when we're talking about health things, it's important for the parents to get to choose those decisions for their children and not necessarily a school board.
Mr. Santucci?
Thank you. There's a good book out there by Dr. Adam Grant who talks about making decisions and rethinking. He brings up a good point about giving yourself a challenge network. Not necessarily a network of people that you surround yourself with where they're just always going to be in agreement with you, but people who are going to challenge the way you think. And that's going to force you to go back and rethink decisions that you may have already made. Now, I believe that challenge network, if done in a respectful manner, helps to make a better whole, or a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. Continuing to work with members after a vote that maybe I was in the minority of is something that I'm used to. Like I said, I'm a department chair, and in that group, we always do have votes, and sometimes it's what I'm in agreement with, sometimes it's not. But as far as dealing with best of the community, talking with one other teacher today, he brought up a good point about going back to the online learning. He said, I would rather wear a hazmat suit every day than go back to online learning.
Mr. Barr?
Yeah, first and most importantly, any ruling that the board would make, I would compare with the oath that I took with the United States Constitution and for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I would compare that rule with what I took an oath to obey and protect and defend. So help me God. And if it's inconsistent, then I could not give in to that rule. I would still get along with my board members, but I would not violate my oath knowingly. I wouldn't be afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. I yield.
Thank you. Our fourth question will start with Ms. Kazera. This goes to an issue regarding busing. The question presumes that there is a busing issue and a shortage and overcrowding. I would ask you to agree or disagree. And to that extent, how would you balance these issues in making budgetary decisions regarding adding busing?
That's an interesting issue because we did just vote on our bus contract a few months ago, and I voted against it, and I did not win. But I do think that there are problems with busing, and I don't know that it can be solved with budget to a certain extent because if there's no drivers, we can't run more buses, and there's a driver shortage, and that's my biggest concern with that. As far as whether or not we should be adding routes, I mean, I think I would certainly be open to something like that, but logistically, I don't know how that would work if we don't have anyone staffing the routes. But it's definitely something I'd be open to exploring further and, given the proper tools to be able to make a difference there.
Ms. Mathis?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of notes. I need more specifics to be able to give a more specific answer. But yes, of course, there are problems with busing that are not limited to the local level right now or even the state level. There are busing and bus driver shortages nationally. And we did discuss the bus contract recently, and I, as well as Ms. Kazera, also voted against it. And it's just kind of interesting because nobody from the community actually came to make any public comments or comment on overcrowding on the buses at those meetings, to my recollection. So it's really important that if there are issues like that they be brought to the board's attention at a board meeting.
Mr. Muha?
Yes, as Ms. Mathis said, the bus driver problem is a nationwide problem. It's not just here, it's not just in the state. We've seen on the news lately about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh offered bonuses for new bus drivers, and many bus drivers from McKeesport School District went to Pittsburgh, and now McKeesport's left holding the bag. So it's definitely a situation we don't want to get into. I don't think it's a budgetary thing. One thing I was thinking of, that when the school sets this up, they have to assume that every kid is riding a school bus, and they have to set up a schedule for that. Well, anybody that goes past the elementary schools and that obviously knows that every kid is not riding the bus. Could it be a possibility that we could get parents that will commit to, that drive their kids now that will commit to driving, and thus we don't have to account for those kids when we make the bus schedule? I mean, that's just one thought to throw out there.
Ms. Neese?
I'll pick it back up, and obviously we know there is a bus driver shortage right now. Another idea, when I was younger, we actually walked to school. I live close enough to High Cliff that it only takes me about 10 minutes, so if we could maybe bring back more walkers. My kids really enjoyed doing that. We had opted out of the bus for last year, and we were able to get there on time. We sometimes beat our bus after we watched the kids standing there. So that I would be definitely open to adding more buses if that was ever going to be an opportunity. The current state of the district, it doesn't appear that that's an option now.
Mr. Santucci?
As everyone else has documented, the bus driver shortage is well evident. I drive past ABC Transit twice a day, once on my way to work, once on my way home from work. I also drive past about 3 big signs that say sign-on bonus, $2,500 for bus drivers. Just in general, as a society, there's a whole lot of jobs out there. There's very meaningful jobs, very important jobs. And unfortunately, a lot of members of our society doesn't respect those jobs. Go all the way back to The Simpsons and Otto the bus driver, right? It was like one of those things that was almost a joke. However, those are the people who are driving our kids. You know, like, they deserve the respect that they should get. Now, as far as solving that crisis, I don't know how you do that. There are some options. Ms. Neese also outlined some, expanding washers or giving options to parents. Without more details, though, it's hard to make a decision or stand one way or another. Thank you.
Mr. Barr.
Yes, if this bus driving shortage was a budgetary concern, we have to keep in mind that the taxpayers can only afford so much of their income. Which brings to a much more important feature, which I support, is there is private schools and there is homeschooling. I wouldn't be opposed to that, to save the public school system revenue. I yield.
Mr. Berger.
So I think we're all in agreement here that there is a problem with transportation, including a driver's shortage. Like Ms. Madden, I can't tell you what that solution is here tonight. With any problem, and it would need to be scoped, defined, assessed, and then resolved. If after that process, so there's a process, right? If after that process it was determined that more funds were needed, I could perhaps support that. But just like any budget item, I am not for just increasing budget and add cost. So if we were to look at the budget and increase it for transportation, I would also ask to do the same with other line items in there to see which ones have the most value, which ones have the most deficiencies, and then balance the budget based on that.
All right, that concludes round 4. Fifth question will go to Ms. Mathis. What are your thoughts on school start time, in specific for high school? Do you believe that it should be a later start, or is the current start acceptable?
Sure, that's actually a very nuanced and complicated question. I do know that the experts say that teens benefit from sleeping in later, and I don't want to discount expertise on this. But it's nuanced because it's a little complicated, because boards previous to me voted to consolidate and stagger the bus schedule and bus routes in order to save the district. I believe it was between $500,000 and $1 million. And it's very cost efficient. To undo that would be very costly. So I think we would need to do a very thorough analysis of what the cost would be to the community, and if there is enough community support to go forward with a program like that, that would cost a lot of money to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Mioha?
Yeah, I think it's a very complicated issue, and just observing my own son as a teenager, yes, he was very hard to get up out of bed at 6 o'clock, but he's also very hard to get out of bed at 8. He's also very hard to get out of bed at 10. He's also very hard to get out of bed at 12. So what time should the start time be? And interestingly enough, during the summer, he had to be at work at 7 o'clock, and he seemed to be able to do that. And the neighbor kid has to be at work at 6. So, yeah, I do have a lot of questions, and I would be open to exploring things. I've read a couple studies. I think a couple of them, I think the conclusions are very weak. One of them stated a 8% or increase in test scores of 8% of the standard deviation. Well, I know not everybody understands statistics, but that's a very small number. That's really insignificant. So I think we could look at it, but we would need a lot more work.
Ms. Neese?
I would agree. It is really hard to get your kids out of bed in the morning at any time of the day. But I think there is a lot that would go into this. How would all of it work? If we have a bus shortage right now, how do we get more buses to get the high school and the middle school kids to school at a later time? Would you flip and have the elementary school kids, and then are they not going to be just as tired? Do they not need as much sleep? How would the kids play sports? I know when I was in high school, we weren't getting home until 6, 7 o'clock for practice, and then you'd have late games. When do they do their homework? I also think you have to set them up to be adults and function in the real world. they're going to have to get a job and they're going to have to get up early. They don't get to start work at 10 o'clock because they're tired. So I don't know that it's my idea of the best thing to do for the kids.
Mr. Santucci?
Yeah, I agree that this issue is kind of like an onion. There's a lot of layers, and I don't think it was one of those things that's determined and written in stone that high school needs to start at 8 o'clock and elementary school needs to start at 9 o'clock. The way that our current system is set up is to accommodate the busing, which is going back to the previous statement, which there's already a shortage of. So trying to span things to all start at the same time would require that busing to be expanded. One of the benefits of having an earlier start time is that students who do take part in extracurricular activities such as sports, they're not missing their last period of the day. Now I say that because I have 3 golfers, and I have 2 soccer players, and I have 4 tennis players in my last period. And of that, they've missed probably about 60% due to games and scrimmages and things like that. So I know at North Hills, we don't have that problem.
Mr. Barr?
Yes, the day start time should be the younger the child, the later. The older the child, the earlier. That's for the day starting time. I'd actually like to see them eliminate daylight savings time. Now, for the full year, I'd like to see them get back to starting school after Labor Day and going back or getting out after Memorial Day. I yield.
Mr. Berger?
So once again, I guess I'll go back to, we would have to do some sort of value assessment and figure out if it is worth changing the school time. What are the benefits? I personally think that there are too many downstream effects in doing so. Some of them have been mentioned already up there. So there's jobs that the parents have to go to. I can't tell you right now if it's more beneficial to shift that time for a certain percentage where it might not be as beneficial for another percentage. And then because I'm involved in sports activities, many of them, I think that there's a big downstream impact on that as well, or could be a downstream impact on that. So I would have to evaluate, assess it, and then come up with a solution.
Ms. Kazera?
Thanks. I don't have too much to add to what other folks have said about the problems associated with looking into this. I do want to mention that North Hills has one of the earliest start times, I believe, in the county. And, you know, anything we could do to make it later, because I do believe there are health benefits to starting, having our high schoolers start a little later. However, the various financial and logistical concerns associated with that give me pause. And we'd have to work through them. I don't know how we could do that. Also, for every person who's happy about that, there'll be a person who's unhappy about it. It's challenging to think about making a change like that, even if it is, if there are definitely health benefits, which I think there are. Thank you.
All right, that concludes question 5. Question 6 will be to Mr. Muha. Assuming you are elected and you are a wishing person, at the end of your 4-year term, what one accomplishment would you want to achieve?
Well, one accomplishment.
One accomplishment.
There are many things that are important and that need to be accomplished, but as I said in my opening, the real reason we're here is for education and preparation of students, and that's something I really want to go after. Recently, an article was saying that North Hills is rated 81st best district in the state, and some people were saying, well, that's not bad. Well, it's not too bad, but 4 years ago we were 54th. So we're moving in the wrong direction here. And just some other things, I've heard people talk about convenience for certain things instead of how effective it is for the education of the student. And pet peeve of mine for a while has been for extracurricular activities, you have to fill 4 classes to be ineligible. And I don't think this is correct. Even one of the coaches said this was too low of a standard. And I know we have failed certain students in this.
Steve?
Yes, at the end of my four-year term, I will have hoped that we will have figured out plans and programs to have figured out how to catch all the kids back up for all of the learning that they have lost in the last year, and that we will have been able to implement some type of mental health program for them as well, so that we'll be able to send them off into the future, wherever they may be, college, trade schools, so that they can be functioning adults in the world and haven't lost too much.
Mr. Santucci.
Thank you. At the end of my 4 years, I would really hope to been able to have implemented some systems for that middle chunk of students. And I know here at North Hills, we do a whole lot for the top tier, right? We have all the AP classes, I believe over 30, over 34. We also do a lot for our low learners. But that little chunk of kids, I know I was one of them, and I kind of felt a little bit left behind, to make reference to one of the past things. Now, at Highlands High School, we developed a pre-apprenticeship program with Milberg Industries, which is a Fortune 500 manufacturing company up in Freeport. We would send our kids there 2 days a month. They would learn from their apprentices, and they could get a job right out of high school, making close to $44,000 a year, which isn't bad for an 18-year-old kid. I'd love to be able to do that here at North Hills. I've already started talking with Dr. Manarino about getting a fire service training for volunteer firefighters, and I would like to see that happen. Thank you.
Mr. Barr.
Yes, at the end of my 4 years, I'd like to be so pleased if we could graduate one of the students to go on and solve the national debt. I yield.
All right, so my wish list item would be to be the #1 school district in the state with a balanced, responsible budget and a safe environment for our students. I don't know if jumping from 81st in the state to #1 would be realistic in 4 years. So if this weren't a wish list and just something a little bit more realistic, I would hope to increase our revenue for the district and continue to not have to raise taxes or dip into our position.
Ms. Kazera.
One of the things I mentioned this previously that I've really enjoyed, having been on the board, is updating some of the policies and working on the policies, and then in turn making sure that that sort of thing is communicated to the appropriate people so that it can be implemented. It's one of the primary functions of the board, is drafting and implementing policies, and I know this sounds super nerdy and boring, but I would love to leave after 4 years, or at the conclusion of a 4-year term, and just have that all sort of streamlined and amazing and super easy to read and understand and all up to date.
Ms. Mathis.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because again, I'll just reemphasize that no singular board member has any power or should really have a singular agenda. However, having said that, as chair of the education committee for the past 4 years, I've become really passionate at looking at the vertical articulation in our classes, looking at the math curriculum, and looking at the math placement in middle school in particular to make sure that kids are placed in the right course, which sets them off on the right path. I actually agree with what Mr. Santucci said about how there are a lot of supports for high academic achieving students. And then of course we have supports in place for students that struggle and need it, but the middle of the road students really could use some extra supports. Aside from that though, if I did have a singular agenda, I'd love for us to tread a little more lightly on the earth, and I'd like to see some environmentally responsible programs implemented in the schools, like recycling, and I'd love to see a dishwasher in the middle school instead of the styrofoam trays. Thank you.
Question 7 goes to Ms. Neese. And it starts out with statistics, whether North Hills is ranked 13th out of 142 or what its ranking is. And really, I think the crux of the question is what do you believe our district needs to address its academic programs and offerings? What would you change? What would you keep? Are you vested in any of the particular programs, whether it's music, arts, or sports, or technical programs that the school offers?
That is quite a question. I will say,
Can't be everything.
So, I would have moved out of the district a long time ago. So I am overwhelmed with how many opportunities the kids have. I think there's a tremendous amount of classes. I was just looking through the book of classes offered, and it's crazy how many more opportunities the kids have now than when I was in school. The one area that I would be interested in taking a look at would be our math curriculum. After going to both of my kids' parent-teacher meetings at the beginning of the year, both teachers said that they are behind in math. I know me personally, and a lot of the parents that I spoke with have a hard time with our math. In second grade, my daughter brought home a question that neither myself nor my husband, who has 2 math degrees, could answer. So after seeing that we are behind in math and the teachers keep reiterating this, I'd like to take a look at our math curriculum to see if there's a way that we could better educate the kids in that area.
Mr. Santucci?
Yeah, so one thing that I would like to focus on is trying to bring real-world connections and relevance to work. I see a lot of students in my own daily life that come in every day, they're good students, but they really don't have that vision. They really don't know what they can do with the skills that they're acquiring. Unfortunately, in America, we're seeing that there's a skills gap, where a lot of the baby boomer generation is retiring from their positions, and those jobs aren't being filled. One of the reasons why they're not being filled is because a lot of our students are getting 4-year degrees, and there's too many degrees and not enough jobs in that field. Again, I always go back to placing the importance on those jobs. We have a community here with a ton of possibilities where we could create unique partnerships with certain companies. You go along the Babcock Boulevard corridor, the McKnight Road corridor. I would like to reach out to them and see if they would be interested as well.
Mr. Barr?
Yes, I think in Pennsylvania would do much better for their students if they would recognize the Pennsylvania Department of Education and not support or follow the federal indoctrination that they do on our states. I think that would be the best thing we could do for our children in our state. I yield.
Mr. Berger?
I believe we need to educate and train our children for more than just a single path. That single path being just for preparation for college education. So what I would like to do is not only have that track and teach and train our children for that path, but also to focus on tech ed and other alternate programs or paths for those who do not want to take the college education path. So as Mike said, below Santucci said below is, I would be all for trying to build mentorship programs where our children can align with those who work in real world experience and perhaps do some of those other, I guess, other more laborious jobs, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Ms. Kazera?
I think it's, we have so many different options here, and you can see it with where our students, where they go after they graduate, and it's a wide variety, it's across the board, and I love that we have that here. And so the thing that I would want to focus on is making sure that we don't cut any of those programs, and that, by that I mean that we have opportunities for anybody, regardless of what their interests are, and some, people here have mentioned some of those interests, and I would support all of those and more. And that extends to our activities, so both academics and athletics and activities. I think, there's so many opportunities here for students to find a niche, and it's a small enough school that you can excel at whatever you pick, regardless of what that is. And I think it's really important that we continue to provide those options.
Ms. Mathis?
I think my answer is kind of the same as the previous question, which is just that I would like to continually look at our math curriculum and ways to improve it. In terms of other things that I would like to see to help boost our academics, I'd love there to be a student help center at the high school where kids could go during one of their free periods for tutoring or when they need extra assistance. I've noticed just with my son in high school that his teachers make themselves available, of course, if he has a free period which aligns with theirs, but it would be really great to have a center or a center built in the library specifically where kids could go for that extra help and support that they need.
Mr. Mueller.
Yeah, one thing, something like Mr. Santucci mentioned, like with our tech ed or even with our GATE students or gifted students, to have some kind of internship with some local companies or visits at least to local companies to learn what they can do or have individuals come in and talk to these students. I agree with the math program. I think the math program definitely needs looked at from the elementary on up. And you know, it may sound surprising, you know, with my talk of education, but you know, the AP and the CHS courses, I think we need to look at them and maybe tweak them a little, and maybe are we offering a little too much? You know, even when I went to Carnegie Mellon, if I would have had a CHS class and opted out of a class, I don't know if that would have been a good thing, going to college and skipping a class as opposed to being in that freshman calculus class.
Thank you. Each of you in your opening talked about your activities, but I'd like to just highlight them one more time. Would you quickly comment on your school district activities, coaching, attending meetings, volunteering, extracurricular coaching for the school district? Mr. Santucci.
Yeah, so again, like I have stated before, after I graduated from Cal U, I was a volunteer wrestling coach here at North Hills at the middle school. I assisted with Ruben Clark. After a few years of that, I just could not make the commute from Ventura Heights back to here in time to attend class. Also, that was BC for children. And once children came along, some interesting things happened there. Also, in my position in school, I was a union representative for our AGA local. Also at Holy Cross Academy, I did teach CCD there for my daughter's 3rd grade class. I had been in the children's liturgy at the 10 o'clock mass at St. Sebastian's, and I hate going first. Thank you.
Mr. Barr.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of involvement with the school district directly. I do run for office within Westview Borough, whether it's for school board or county council or Westview Council. I'm very active in that. My wife and I, you know, we've been in Westview 38 years, we're married 50 years, and we did have a child daycare business for 17 years in Westview. But direct interaction with the school, I don't have really much to speak of. I am active in other organizations to learn about the public school system. So I can't say that I'm really that active.
Mr. Berger.
So yes, serve our youth and families in the area in the way of athletics and academics. I would like to highlight here that truly my proudest accomplishment, maybe in the last 10 years, outside of having my son, and fathering my son, was giving our children a place to socialize last year. So I got, as I mentioned before, I got to see the academic impacts. I got to see it from both perspectives, because I'm a great big brother, big sister, Pittsburgh Public School District versus here. I got to see those differences, and not only giving them a place to socialize, but just helping them organize their lives last year and getting them through issues, including helping them with the Keystones and PETA systems.
Ms. Kazera.
In my free time, I'm on the school board. I forgot to mention previously, I do work full-time. I work at K&L Gates in a non-practicing attorney position, so that actually keeps me pretty busy. Prior to being on the school board, I was active with the Pittsburgh Sports League. I played DEFCON 8 kickball, 10-time kickball championships, which is, you know, before and during kids actually, which is probably a poor choice. But since I've been on the school board, I have been active in policy and various other committees associated with the school board. It's, you know, it's been pretty time consuming. I don't have my own personal free time because both of my daughters play softball right now. So we are at softball games pretty much all the time. And so I was kind of just transitioning into supporting their sports. I'm not a coach. I don't have that skill set. So I'm a good parent, volunteer.
Ms.
attendee.
Malley.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, as I previously mentioned, I'm a former PTO president of Ross Elementary. I'm current president of the school board. I chair the education committee, and I serve on a variety of other committees. I chair the Westview renovation ad hoc committee. I'm on the strategic planning committee. I'm on the wellness committee. I am currently Section 5 advisor to the Pennsylvania School Board Association. I was also recently appointed to the North Hills Foundation Board. I serve in a volunteer capacity in all of my kids' activities. I was a manager of my daughter's lacrosse team one year. Many people probably saw me rushing around at the band festival. I was serving in a variety of volunteer capacities this past weekend, so I'm a very active parent volunteer.
Mr. Viola.
My activities, more directly towards school, not so much volunteers, but what I do, I have been regularly attending school board meetings for the most part, at least pre-COVID, watching them at least post-COVID. I have been attending public budget committee meetings probably for 15 years, which is a more detailed explanation of the school budget. It's very worthwhile. Last year I was treasurer of the North Hills Football Parents. Other activities, I've been a coach in North Hills Athletic Association baseball, Little Kicker soccer, Wings of the Moon youth track, which we don't have a youth track here, but there have been kids from Ross in that. Cub Scout Pack 283 out of McIntyre. I was in a leadership position there, and I'm treasurer of Boy Scout Troop 368, which is out of St. Teresa's. So I've been a pretty busy guy with that.
Ms. Neese.
So I am an active member of our PTO at Highcliffe. I am usually one of the party leads each year, and I try and go into as many events as I can to help with whatever they need. I also volunteer at our preschool. I have been a CCD teacher at St. Athanasius Parish. I am currently an aide at St. John Newman in the Good Shepherd program. I also, like Mike, used to volunteer for the children's liturgy programs at our churches. Hopefully they'll be bringing those back soon. And then both of my kids, my older kids, are on the swim team. So I try and help out at swim meets when there's opportunities to volunteer, helping with the concession stand in the summer, things like that.
Okay, going to Mr. Barr, a little bit juicier of a question. Do you consider the school district budget to be an investment in our children's future or a burden on the taxpayer? How will this shape your tenure on the board? And in specific, what budget cuts would you make? What budget cuts would you never consider cutting?
Well, I really think it's not, you can't buy education. You have to earn it. But as far as the curriculum, I would really highly support trade schools. The Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association is dying, pleading for people that can run lathes and machines like that. I don't think there's enough of people that want to get out there and do that type of work. They want to maybe sit behind a desk and with a white shirt on, but they do need people like that. I would really emphasize that type of work.
Mr. Berger.
I consider it an investment. Respectfully, I couldn't tell you here right now what line items that would be, I guess, in jeopardy, for lack of a better term, versus which I would invest in. Once again, I'll go back to a previous answer that I believe that each budget item should be assessed for its value. I mean, this is what I do professionally, right? Like as a senior manager, hiring manager, global manager, you have to find efficiencies. You have to find opportunities for the next 20 years. I mean, it really does expand out that far if you want to be successful. So there's always going to have to be conversations about where in the budget are there opportunities that would best serve our children in our community versus where I guess I'll consider them to be just line items on there that we continue to throw money at.
Kazara?
I would, of course, absolutely consider it an investment in our students and our community to have a good school district because it draws people to the area if we have a good school district, and that's that's to everybody's benefit to have a popular and productive district in which we live. The problem with budget every year is that many of our costs are fixed. We don't have a lot of control over. It's a very limited pool from which we can cut. I am proud of our district because for many years, both before I was on the board and since I've been on the board, we've kept costs in check, we've kept debt low, we're in an excellent financial position. That also benefits the district. So while I don't necessarily know that we would be able to cut things, but it's hard to speak of that conceptually. I want to. Having a school district in a good financial space is also very important.
I'm just going to go ahead and agree with everything Ms. Kosare said. Education is absolutely an investment in our community. Education costs money, but having said that, I believe in responsible taxation. And the board did not raise taxes in 2020 when we were in the middle of a pandemic, and there were some very difficult decisions that had to be made in regards to personnel positions that we wanted to add that we weren't able to. But we were able to deliver a zero tax increase that year. Having said that, I would not support cutting any programs that are in the arts or athletics. I really believe those add to a well-rounded education. And those also benefit our entire community because they're able to enjoy musical performances of our students and going to games. And I see them almost out of time, so thank you.
Ms. Rio?
Well, burden or investment, I think it can be either one, depending on how well you do it or how good you do it. Right away, something I would not do. I mean, we could save a lot of money if we raise the class size to 30 students. I think that would be a very bad idea. And I would, even though it would save a lot of money, that's something I would never support. I think we need, the class sizes we have now. But even with the budget for the school, I think, I don't think it's an oversimplification to say it's kind of like your household budget, just with a lot more bigger numbers. There's things you have to do. I probably need a new roof next summer. Last thing in the world I want to do, but you have to account for things like this. Also needs versus want. Certain things you need. I need transportation. A Ferrari would be great. I drive a Ford Focus instead. It does the same job as the Ferrari does, basically. These are the things you always got to question, the wants versus the needs.
Ms. Dees?
I think that it is definitely an investment in our kids. I think it's important that when we are making that large investment, that we're doing it in the right areas that are going to give the students the greatest opportunity to succeed. I also believe that it should be done responsibly. I don't think we should get every single thing that we want. I think it should be run like a household budget. Things that you need, things that you want, and you go from there.
Mr. Santucci?
Yeah, I believe that public education is an investment into our youth. It's also an investment into our own futures because they're going to be the ones who are running things whenever we are no longer doing so. One thing that I would really love to take a look at is the funds that get shifted to cyber charter schools. I believe one of the past few years, I think it was year 2019, 2020, North Hills had to pay $1.6 million, towards cyber charter schools that our students left North Hills and went to that arena. Now, being able to offer cyber school, which I believe that we could do, a lot more fiscally responsible and offer the same option for those students, but with North Hills teachers would save money. One non-negotiable would be not only the arts, tech ed, because I am obviously a firm believer in that, but student safety. Would never sacrifice student safety to save a couple bucks.
Okay, question 10. I think I've had this in every one of my 5 years of moderating, or 5 times moderating, so we'll do it one more time. This is going to go to Mr. Berger. What thoughts do you have on changing the Indian mascot? why or why not?
So I am not for changing the mascot, especially at this time. So along the lines of, it's a pretty good segment, right? So the main reason at this current time that I wouldn't consider that as a priority is because of the budgetary reasons. Anytime that you go through a rebranding effort, you are talking about millions and millions of dollars that I don't believe we have. The reason why I don't believe we have that is not only did I attend all of the budget meetings as they were going on, but because we raised our taxes last year and dipped into our futures fund. So on that principle alone, I wouldn't prioritize it high, and I don't consider it a high problem at this point.
Ms. Kazera?
Yeah, this is, I knew this was going to come up. So this is a challenging issue, and it's similar to the approach that I would take in the school start times. It's, first of all, it's not something that I think should be addressed while we're in the middle of dealing with pandemic issues, in part because people in our community on both sides of this issue have very strong feelings, and I think that they both make very good points about the benefits of the change versus the problems with the change. I would love to have the opportunity to discuss it and as a community, because I think that's what needs to be done. It's the only, the trend is to change the sort of native mascots, but there are definitely, I mean, the feelings of the pride that people who are from here have with that, with the mascot is certainly something to consider, and it's a very good question, and I don't think it's something that we can address at the present time.
Ms. Mathis?
Yes, so my opinion on this, and I believe I've said this publicly, is that we should have a committee, a public committee with multiple opportunities for community input to look at this as a community, to overuse the word community. This is something that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about. I believe it is the students' mascot too, and the students should have a voice in this. It has been very difficult during COVID to have these kinds of, public town halls or committees. So this is something that I do believe that we should look at and discuss as a community going forward, because we would need community support for something like this, one way or the other.
Mr. Vito?
Yeah, my personal opinion is I don't feel it's offensive, but I do hear other people say, and maybe one of the things we could do is have some kind of meeting. If I was on the board, we could meet with a Native American group, and maybe even with the other schools. There are 5 schools in the WPIL, I believe it's 5, that have that mascot, and maybe have some discussions with what is felt about it, what is felt as wrong, what is felt as right, and what is the how can we move forward with honoring this, and maybe we could also use this as an opportunity to learn more about the history of Western Pennsylvania. Back before the white settlers moved in, and
Thank you, Mr. Vito. Ms. Dees?
So I think for many years to come, we have a lot more things that we'll need to be focusing on. But I have lived my whole life in the North Hills, and I am proud to be a North Hills Indian. When I think of Indians, the words strong and brave come to my mind. And I feel like that's what we should be wanting our kids to feel, strong and brave. And that's what we should be teaching them, to be strong and brave, especially during the times that we're going through right now. I'd also like to add that as a parent of students in the district and a taxpayer, I would much rather see the district spend money on students' education, resources, and mental health, as opposed to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to change a mascot.
Mr. Santucci?
Just like Elizabeth said, this is me, sorry. Yeah, I also wrestled for North Hills. I played football for North Hills. I wore the Indian logo with pride. It was something that meant something to me. That being said, one thing that also means something to me, and I teach this to my daughters all the time, is you don't get to decide if you hurt somebody's feelings or not. If somebody else takes offense to something, you don't get to say, well, I didn't mean it like that. The National Congress of American Indians, or the NCAI, is a group that's designed and developed to eradicate Indian logos. Schools like Penn Hills, Aliquippa, Peters Township, West Allegheny, Carrick, Elizabeth Ford, Seneca Valley, and Mohawk, who don't have Indian logos, but they are the Warriors and Raiders, they are also in the same pool, just like Mr. Buha said. That being said, we have signs at each school, we have scoreboards at each school, we have a couple hundred band uniforms and other markings, so for that reason, I would not vote to change the Indian mascot.
And we'll finish it up with Mr. Barr.
Yes, I think it's a non-issue, and it reminds me of some of the training and education I had in child development, where, and it was a theory called chemical warfare. And what you do with a child that's having bad behavior is you just ignore it, and it goes away. And I think that's what we should do with this mascot issue. I will.
Thank you. We'll start question 11 with Ms. Kazera. How in particular will you advocate for students with special needs? How can you make parents, students feel comfortable, welcome, and included in school events for these students?
Thanks. That's, I mean, I think everyone should feel welcome at our events, and I know that we have, you know, started to kind of look into this a little more deeply, and I think we could continue to do so. I know that there was some discussion and some thoughts about some of our larger outdoor events. There may be, you know, children with sensory issues maybe would like to attend, but they're overwhelmed by the number of people at an event. And honestly, some of the events, I wouldn't blame them at all. But you know, looking into allowing, you know, kids to come early, maybe have they do that at some of the theaters. They have like a sensory performance and that sort of thing. I think is definitely something we could stand to explore a little more in our district, and I would definitely support that sort of thing.
Ms. Mathis?
Yes, so one of the most important and really only roles of the school board is actually to write policy for the district, and Ms. Kazera chairs that committee. So first, I think it's really important to make sure that we're doing that through our policy and making sure that we have equitable policies that support students with special needs throughout the district. So if some kind of a policy audit is necessary for that specifically, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, we do want everybody to feel welcome, and frankly, from some of the parents I've talked to, I think we're doing a good job for the most part. And my son was involved in the Buddy Club, which groups students together with some of the special needs children, and you know, several of them came to his graduation party, and you know, I was talking to them there, and you know, some of the parents that did come, and you know, I think that's a very worthwhile program, and you know, my son and they really enjoyed my son's company, and you know, one of them was saying about how much they were going to miss him this year now that he's gone.
Ms. Dees?
Yes, obviously we want everyone to feel welcome. I think a great idea would be to form a committee to find out what the parents are looking for their children, to make sure that we're providing them with the same opportunities as everybody else. And once we would get together and meet with them, then develop a plan to move forward so that we'll be able to include everyone in all of the activities that the district currently provides.
Mr. Santucci?
I'm not quite sure if inclusion is something that can be quantified. You know, you can't like put a number to it. But what you can do is you can see how students treat other students. The school that I work, I know that we have a community of caring students who care for one another, which is evidenced by the fact that we've had several prom queens, homecoming kings, things of that nature. I would, however, like to see some more things being offered. One statistic that's kind of surprising is the leading cause of premature death for autistic individuals is drowning. I didn't know that up until a couple months ago. So being able to offer things like swim classes for special needs students and additional opportunities, such as maybe having special performances with lights and sound here in the auditorium.
Mr. Barr?
Judge Chief, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, the question was, how would you advocate for students with special needs? How can you make those parents of those students feel comfortable, and the students as well at school events?
I don't quite, I thought that was already a requirement at this time, in, federal or state requirement. And I don't know what an individual, if you're talking about individual students, they're gonna be students if that's what we're leading to here. If they're just students are students, and we can try to explain to them and educate them about everybody is equal in God's eyes. I guess I'll yield it, Judge.
Mr. Berger?
So I believe that there's probably opportunities. I would be an advocate for them to expand education and training, to just build additional awareness around it and to help support them. I believe that we can build peer programs to involve them more, better understand them, help support them. One thing that comes to mind is something very recent, right, this week with Happiness Week. You can build in certain activities and certain programs to make them feel welcome.
All right, that concludes question 11. We'll go to question 12 to Ms. Mathis. What would your position be regarding a tax break for seniors?
That's an interesting question because that's something I actually have discussed in public. In theory, I was in favor of it. In practice, we actually did some research behind the scenes, the finance committee, and looked at how this was sort of being put into practice successfully or unsuccessfully in other school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. And it didn't seem like it was going to be something that was feasible, which was very disappointing to me because I thought it sounded like a good idea.
Mr. Beulah?
Yeah, it may sound good, on paper, but I'm not sure that's such a good idea. Because, so much of the funding is local. Actually, one idea for a tax break that I thought of is, because one of the worst things you can have in a district is houses getting in disrepair, not being upgraded or repaired. And I know some districts very aggressively go after people that do remodeling or do upgrades to their house. And I think this is a bad idea and discourages people. And maybe some kind of policy that, okay, you invest in your house, we won't raise your your taxes will stay the same for a certain period of time. This way it encourages people to fix up their house and take care of their house, which benefits the whole community.
Ms. Neese?
I would need to do a lot of research to learn about this particular topic and to see how the numbers would play out, to see if it would be feasible before I would be able to make any decision on this.
Mr. Santucci?
Yeah, similarly, this is one of the first times I've heard of the concept, and it does sound really good at first, and then taking a couple moments to consider what all that means, and at what age would that tax break come, and what happens for married couples who have different ages and things like that. There are a lot of variables involved. One thing that also plays into this is the county assessment. So our taxes are based off of millage, right? We can, as school board members, potential school board members, we only take care of the millage, which here in North Hills is one of the lowest
taxation must be equal. And what I mean by that is we have to get out of this direct tax and go into an indirect tax. The difference between a direct tax is you have to pay it. An indirect tax is you decide if you want to purchase or subscribe or buy or whatever. So that's the difference. We need to go to an indirect tax, and that's how we should fund our everything. Thank you.
Mr. Burker.
So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in this area. I'd have to understand the cost and benefit analysis to give a specific answer. I guess a couple of points that I would make here is, one, what would be the cost of doing that? And then it sounds to me like many ideas, they sound good in theory, but what's the practicality and impact of doing that? I would need to understand that better.
Ms. Kazera.
I think that we have opportunities to increase our revenue, and I'm not sure that that is the best choice as far as the initial go-to. And, you know, as with everybody, there are, as mentioned, there are some, you know, potential concerns that we haven't really looked into, but it's certainly, you know, costs are increasing and we should consider things. I don't know if that's the first or right thing to consider as far as increasing our revenue.
Okay, question 13 will go to Mr. Uhal. And folks have done a pretty good job of indicating you're not experts in all areas. And so the question goes to this. If you don't have a particular skill set in that area of question or issue, how will you educate yourself prior to making a vote? What types or resources would you consult before voting on a particular issue?
Oh, well, anything that you need to get knowledge of. Well, first, it is the people of the community. What are they saying? What is their opinion on it? You have other school board members and administration to ask their opinion. You have the internet, although obviously you have to be careful with on the internet. We also have Northland Public Library, which is another possibility to go look for research. So I think we have plenty of opportunities to do research on any subject and educate ourselves on anything that might be coming up for a vote.
Steve?
Yes, I would spend a lot of time doing research on my own to see as much as I could learn. If there was a class available for me to take, I would be more than willing to do that. I would also communicate with other experts in our area that have a greater knowledge, whether it be fellow board members or community members. And then I think it would also be beneficial, depending on what the subject is, to maybe reach out to other school boards in our area to see what they're doing, if they've had those same problems, and to see if they would be able to help us in any way.
Mr. Santucci?
On any subject that I'm not knowledgeable on, I always like to start by trying to clearly identify what the actual problem is, what the issue is. Then going into the research mode, I always like to take a second and say, hey, I'm sure I'm not the first person to have this problem. So what have other people done? What worked for them? What didn't work for them? What maybe was almost a breakthrough and they felt just a little bit short? So going in to do that type of research. Now, as far as taking input, obviously we serve the community. That means we need to take input from all of the community members. Listening, weighing facts, weighing options, and still trying to maintain that fiscal responsibility and budgetary restraints.
Mr. Barr?
Yes, I was just listening to a conference call. It was a constitutional lawyer that was referring to David Crockett. He said, make sure you're right and then go ahead for it. Go for it.
Ms. Burger?
So, the first thing that I would do anytime that I walk into a new position, I think you have to lean on those who have done it before, right? So there are current board members on there. I would seek their input and advice to understand the historical context. I know a lot of previous school board members, so I would also seek the advice of previous school board members. And then, of course, as everybody mentioned here, that there's a component of self-learning and self-teaching. And I believe that if you use all those resources, then you can come up with a solid idea.
Ms. Kazera?
The first step for me is usually, sometimes when you're presented with something, you don't know what you don't know, and you have to kind of figure out, in order to be the most efficient, you have to figure out what you don't know and what you need to know to kind of resolve the problem. And that, for me, that's always going to start with a discussion, either with the subject matter experts at the school or with the other board members to determine how to proceed. And then once I have my arms around what the actual issue is, then I would, to the extent necessary, do some additional research and consultation to determine next steps.
And Ms. Babbs?
Yes, I usually begin by speaking to the administration, but then reaching out to whoever the stakeholders are, depending on what the issue is. So if it's an issue with teachers, I try to talk to teachers. If it's an issue with parents, I try to talk to parents. I think our board has done a really good job of soliciting community input. We are very accessible via email, and there are multiple opportunities to come speak to the board on any given issue. I also personally try to attend conferences and seminars whenever I can to educate myself. I have relationships with other school board members in other local districts. And then beyond all that, I try to do any research I need to with neutral and reliable media sources.
Thank you. I see we're close to quarter till, but I'm going to make the 7 of you tonight school board members, and I'd ask you to raise your hand in a vote, either raising your hand if you want one more question, or if you don't, keep your hand down.
You hear the question first?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Not going to do that for you folks. One more question or not, by raised hands. Great, that's a question I didn't want to ask. We'll start with Ms. Neese. If the federal, state, and county governments yield authority to North Hill School District to make this decision, what would your position be on masks and mandating COVID vaccines for students, educators, and people in their building?
Way to end that one. So I, again, will state that I believe that decisions that impact the health of our children should be made by their parents and not a school board or a government. A parent is the most important person to a child. They know their child and what is best for their child. Therefore, they should decide whether or not their child is vaccinated or not. In America, we have the freedom to make choices. That's what's so great about America. If your family chooses to get vaccinated, that's great, that's your right to do so. At the same time, if you choose not to, that's also your right. So I believe we need to be able to make the choices that are best for our own families.
Thank you, Mr. Santucci.
I do believe that parents should have the right to make medical decisions about their children. It is up to them to choose and within conversations with their children whether or not they want to get the vaccination that is available. However, whenever we are in a public setting, in a school setting, I do also believe that you're dealing with the constraints of that district. So, that being said, in my experience, coming back from school the day after Labor Day on Tuesday, I work in a non-mask mandatory school. We had 85 kids quarantined after 7 days of instruction. Not 85 kids sick, 85 kids quarantined because of close contact from Allegheny County Health Department. So, and that's a cycle that could happen again and again throughout the school year. I want to see my kids in school 5 days a week. Like I said before, if I had to, I'd put a hazmat suit on and go to work. Thank you.
Mr. Barr.
This COVID thing is, it's the only time I think the healthy were quarantined. I would definitely make it an individual decision on your children and yourself.
Mr. Berger?
I believe that medical decisions are an individual or family choice, not that of a government or a government board to force mandates. Two, the issue that I have with it is, if I were to be sworn in, I would be sworn in under an oath that I would uphold the U.S. Constitution, state constitution, and school board codes. I personally believe the board has made decisions and set policies outside of their purview. I understand their position in it. That's just my position in it. I think that we all are living under a false sense of security. We buy these masks, we wear these masks, and when we purchase them, there are disclaimers on there saying that they do not prevent the spread of viruses. So I don't want to get very controversial at the end here, but I have a lot of questions. And if you have a lot of questions, I don't think we can go with force mandates.
Ms. Kazera?
This is not a shock, I'm sure, that I did vote and would vote for a mask mandate when numbers are high and not all of our population has the ability to be vaccinated. If either of those things changed, I would reconsider the vote. It's based on wanting to keep kids in school and the nature of the Allegheny County Health Department's protocols with respect to quarantining, and my feeling that students should be in school 5 days a week, and masks are the best way to keep them there. As far as mask mandate goes, vaccination mandate, I have not thought about that at all, and I would need to think about that some more. I don't have an opinion on that at this time.
Ms. Mathis?
Yeah, so I believe it's a false narrative to say that wearing a mask is a medical decision, because I believe it's a public health decision. And public health decisions that involve the entire community and keeping the schools open, at this time, in this current climate, it's not in the best interest to leave those decisions up to individuals. As I said at the board meeting, we're the Board of Education, and we need to focus on how we are going to educate these kids 5 days a week in person right now. And with respect to the current quarantine guidelines in Allegheny County, wearing masks is the best way to do that right now. Of course, that might change in the future, as if we've learned anything since March of 2020, it's that the situation is constantly changing and requires constant evaluation. And I'm going to yield my time now.
Mr. Buha?
Can you repeat the wording? I have a question, please.
Sure, and I reworded the question as a good lawyer would. If the federal, state, and county government yielded authority to Northfield School District to make the decision on mandating masks and COVID vaccine for students and educators, what would your position be?
Okay, good. Yes, well, first of all, I think they should yield to the local school board. I think that's where the decision should be made. On a personal level, yes, the main goal right now is 5 days a week. I am not big on masks. I hate this mask. That's why I have my glasses on, because it fogs them up. But if we have to wear the mask right now to be in school 5 days a week, so be it. Vaccination is a little more complicated. As I said, my wife works over McIntyre. When she first became eligible for the Johnson & Johnson, she got it. When I first became eligible for the vaccination, I got it. When my son first became eligible for the vaccination, he got it, and now he's in college. Now, talking with the younger kids, well, that's a little different because, I know we're in a pandemic, the research has been shortened, that might be a little iffier.
Thank you all for answering that last question. Thank you all for working unanimously. Hopefully, if the 7 of you somehow were elected, I guess that won't happen. You would have at least voted unanimous on one vote. That concludes our questions. We're going to go to closing statements, and we're going to start with Mr. Santucci. 2 minutes.
So, in closing, I know I'm sometimes referred to as long-winded. I can talk a little bit more. So it's tough to get these sort of big, broad, overarching issues confined down to a 60-second statement, especially whenever you've got someone in the front row telling you only got 15 seconds. so very proud to be from North Hills. I'm so very proud to live in North Hills. So very proud to raise my kids in North Hills. I hope at some point they get houses here, homes here, and they raise their children here as well. I do believe in the power of teamwork. I do try to keep things positive and always look for the good, because there is always good in people, regardless of, how hard sometimes you have to look. If elected to the board, I would really, really hope to become that board member who is someone that represents the community, the hardworking nature of our community, dealing with times and trials and tribulations, and coming up better on the other side. Being able to look at any given situation, whether it be something as temporary as wearing masks or something as permanent as renovating Westview Elementary, and taking all factors into consideration and say what is best not only for our present, what is best to not only honor the past, but what is best for our future, because our future is the only thing that we have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Barr.
Yes, my service on Northfield School Board wouldn't achieve my overall goal, and that's that it deals with taxation and federal government indoctrination on the state school systems, and but I think I could maybe learn a lot myself, because I'm pretty adamant about my position like David Crockett. I feel very strongly on my position, and if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected, and I hope my service on the school board would give me the truth, and that's what I'm seeking, just the truth. I yield.
Mr. Berger.
Thank you. I'd like to close by again thanking all of you tonight for hosting the event and actively participating. Up here, there are 7 candidates vying for 4 seats that will be decided on November 7th. My experience serving in leadership roles would tell me that we all ultimately want the same thing: a stronger Northfield School District for our current and future students, staff, and for the entire community. But I'd ask you to focus not on that and what we all desire, but rather how each of us would get you there. I personally have concerns on decisions and actions taken by our board over the past year. In a lot of ways, I would lead differently. As my commitments from my opening statement show, I am interested in serving only our community with no strings attached and no larger agenda at hand. I ask for your support and vote up to and through Election Day on November 2nd. Thank you.
Ms. Kazera.
Thanks again to everybody who's participated, taken part in the in our audience, and those who organized the event. I really appreciate the opportunity, as I think it's really important for voters to have the opportunity to hear people's opinions and positions on things. With that said, I hope it's come across that for me, the most important thing is often the process by which we get to the vote and the decision at the end. It is hard to kind of balance that. What is the best thing for the community versus what is my personal view on something, and going through the process and going through the steps are, I think, what a good board member does to make those determinations, and what I hope to do in all of my board decisions. I thank everybody for the opportunity to be here tonight, and I look forward to the possibility of continuing to serve the community in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time this evening, and thank you again to the parent-teacher groups for organizing this event. I truly hope that the community has gotten a chance to know me throughout my first term on the board and what kind of board member I am. I hope you base your decisions and judgments on that going forward. I show up for the community. I'm accessible. I listen to people. I am a tireless advocate for North Hills and for public education. I am a dedicated board member who has only missed one board meeting during my 4-year term, which was when my father passed away shortly after I was elected in 2017. Sometimes I get asked why I do this. Actually, quite often I get asked why I do this. School board is a volunteer, unpaid position. In fact, it is the only unpaid elected position in the state of Pennsylvania. The truth is that my father instilled the value of community service in me at a young age. I grew up watching him volunteer his time and serve in leadership positions on various boards. He was vocal, and he taught me to be a tireless advocate for what I believe in and to keep my head held high in all circumstances. So in conclusion, I'd just like to restate that public education, in case it's not obvious, is so important. It is important to our community. Communities with good schools flourish, as is the case here in North Hills. Let's stay focused on the big picture going forward. We all want to provide the very best education and experience for every student in our district. I ask for your vote in November so that I might be able to continue this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buha.
And thank you, everybody that put this together. Thank you, everybody that's here live in person, and everybody that I guess will be watching this on YouTube or nhsd.net or wherever it is. I just want basically to think about two things. You heard a lot of stuff here, a lot of good questions, very good questions that people put in. Shows the support and the involvement of our community. But I want you to think about the question about attributes, of a school board member, as a quality manager, as an engineer, as somebody with a business degree, as somebody that manages people, as somebody that trains people, the passion for education, the volunteer with youth. I want you to think about, is this the kind of person you want on a school board, making decisions? And these decisions do have a great effect. As I said, we're rated 81st in the state right now. We're 54th 4 years ago. 4 years from now, can we be 50? Can we be better than that? Because what does this matter? For people that don't have kids, this has a big effect on your home value. This has a big effect on the quality of your community. For your kids, you parents with 5-year-olds, this has a tremendous effect on your kid. When they're 35, when they're 45, what they're learning in our school will affect them for the rest of their lives. It's a local decision, but it's really one of the most important decisions you can make. Thank you.
Steve, you started, you finished.
All right. Thank you again to everybody who came tonight and for the PTO for putting this together. One of the biggest reasons that I decided to run for the school board was that I wanted to ensure the voice of the parents, the students, and the residents, that they are requested and considered when it comes to major decisions being made. This past year and a half, myself and countless other families felt unheard as to what parents and students wanted and needed as far as their education was concerned. I sent countless emails, and each time I was given a response, this is the decision we're making right now, we're not doing a survey at this time, this is what's happening. So as a school board member, I would want to hear what everyone's opinions are. I would take their opinions into consideration and do what's best for the students, not necessarily what I personally would want to have done. Another thing that I'd like to do and like you all to know, as a school board member, I'd really like to get into the schools. I'd like to talk to the students, talk to the teachers, talk to the administrators, see what they love, see what's really working, see what they don't like, see where they need help, and then work on plans to provide that help so that we can have even better learning opportunities for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. A round of applause. As represented by the candidates, thanks to the moms and the PTO for organizing the event. Our video and audio, we can't thank you enough. We hope that it reaches a bunch of people, so thank you. And I see in the back are two officers, and I had a really nice impression this morning. I was going to work, and I'm never early, but it was my court aide, and I seen one of our North Hills School District officers and she was taking a picture of a student as the student was going into school, and it was really heartfelt because to me, many years ago, there was question as to whether or not we should adopt officers or not, and it was well debated in the school. And to me, that child, probably for the rest of this school year and maybe years to come, will remember that event of an officer taking a picture of her before he went into school. And so what happens here tonight, what happens by the school district in the future is critically important, just by the example that I've seen today. So I'd be remiss in not recognizing Officer Machinsky and Officer Basong, who serve us very well in our school district. So thank you all for that. Election day is November 2nd. I won my race in 2004 by 13 votes. There's 50 people here, more or less. Your 50 votes count. 50 times 100 will make the difference in this election. It's important for you to get out and tell the community what you heard today, what you liked, what you didn't like, because I wouldn't be here 18 years later if it wasn't for those 13 votes. So I encourage you to take that forward. Please get home safe and go North Hills. Thank you all.